So yesterday was the first day of early voting in Georgia, and we had a record-breaking day in Georgia with over 300,000 people voting in that first day, smashing any record that they had before. And a lot of Democrats were happy. They were in the media, they were online talking about how this is a really good day for the Democrats. But as everything settled down and as we see where the votes came from, who did it really benefit? Well, at the end of the day, slightly, and I mean just slightly, the Republicans. So today what we're going to do is we're going to break down the first day of voting, early voting in Georgia, look at how the geographical composition of this vote is. We're going to look at the Nowcast model now that we have some actual good numbers and see where Georgia is heading, and then see what we can glean out of this first day of early voting. Is there anything that we can look at and say, oh, this is a trend or not? So let's go ahead and start with the vote composition. So the main reason why we see the Republicans doing a little better in the first day is pure and simple. In the Republican counties, Republicans did a little bit better, whereas in the Democratic counties, you had some counties that were pretty bad, but then some counties that were pretty good. They kind of offset each other a little bit, but maybe not too much. The negatives were more than the positives. So let's go ahead and look at the first counties, which will be the Democratic counties. All right, so let's go ahead and first look at the vote composition. So what is this? This actually looks at the percentage of the vote that each county contributes to the overall number. So if we look at Fulton County there, the first number that we have is 10.5%. What that means is of all the votes that came in 2020, 10.5% of those came from Fulton County. So each one of these numbers in 2020 is what each of these counties contributed as far as the overall vote, their composition, their percentage of it. Now, the October 16th number, that's of today with some of the numbers that we've gotten in early this morning, that's the composition of the vote right now with early vote and some vote by mail as well, but it is mostly early voting. But as you can see, Fulton County right now is 1.7% higher than its composition in 2020. This number will probably go down, but it is a good sign that Fulton County actually did their job, and actually Fulton County was the best performing county in the entire state. So good job to them as far as the composition of the vote. But this is where it gets a little bit worrying for Democrats. So you take Cobb County, which is a slightly Democratic county, but trending more and more Democratic. It was 1% less compared to its composition in 2020. We take DeKalb County, which is a very strong Biden county, and to be a Harris County, and we can see that it's also down nearly 0.8%. But Gwinnett County is the big one. This is a Democratic county that's starting to become more and more Democratic, and it was down 2.1% as far as the composition of the vote compared to 2020. So a lot of voters did not turn out in Gwinnett County. That hurt the Democrats very, very much. And then in Clayton County, a little bit of a smaller county, we do see that they were 2.2% of the composition in 2020. But now, as of October 16th, they're 2.8%. So they are up a little bit. But as you can see, those negatives that we have in Gwinnett, DeKalb, and Cobb County are much larger. Well, maybe not much larger, but larger than Fulton and Clayton put together. This is the reason why you have the Democrats doing a little bit poorly, is because Gwinnett, DeKalb, and Cobb County just didn't perform as well yesterday as maybe people were hoping they would. Now, if we look at some of the larger Republican counties and the gains that they have, we can see that their gains are not necessarily huge. So if we look at Forsyth County, where Trump got 66%, we see that the composition is only gone up by 0.5%. So we're not talking about a huge increase. And then all the other ones are pretty much between 0.6, which is Greene County at the bottom, which is not a big composition of the vote at all. It's a smaller county. And then the other ones are between 0.3 and 0.1. So you don't see a lot of the Republicans really gaining. So as you can see, we have Gwinnett, Cobb, and DeKalb County really underperforming on this first day. And what that means is that all these little counties that we see in Georgia that might be Republican counties that just have this 0.1% increase, those are going to be the counties that add up. So this is where the discrepancy comes in. As I mentioned, Fulton County, they did their job yesterday. They did well, actually. Clayton County did well as well. And some of the other Democratic counties down south did quite well. But it was just these metro Atlanta counties that really underperformed and what's kind of skewing the numbers in the Republican way right now. So if these numbers are able to get back to where they should be as far as composition of the votes, then it looks like they'll be okay. But as of right now, Cobb, DeKalb, and Gwinnett are a little bit worrisome for the Democrats. But again, remember, this is just the first day of early voting. Now, one of the myths behind early voting in general is this idea of, oh, it always goes Democratic. Well, that depends on the election, depends on the state, sometimes even depends on the county. It's not necessarily a given thing, but yet people like to use this as a blanket statement for every single election. I've already shown evidence when it comes to Florida how this is not the case, but let's go look at the 2022 election, the composition of the vote in the Senate general election, which would have been not the runoff, but the regular general election. And let's see how that vote broke down to kind of give us an idea of what we should maybe expect as far as how these different types of voting methods should behave. So as you can see in the 2020 Senate election, only 6% of the vote was vote by mail, and you can see Raphael Warnock absolutely knocked that one out of the park. To be honest, it is this vote by mail number that actually gave Raphael Warnock a little bit of a lead in both of these elections, the general one and the runoff. So even though it's 6%, having that big of a lead actually helped Warnock at the end. Now, if we look at early voting, it is 58% of the overall vote. So it is a significant part. But you can see Raphael Warnock won it, but with 52% to 45%. So it's not this big, huge number that everyone might think it is. Now, the reason we see that little discrepancy in the numbers is there was a libertarian candidate running here as well. I did not include them on this. Now, if you look at election day, which is 36% of the vote, we can see Herschel Walker did quite well here, and Raphael Warnock only got 41% of the vote. So therefore, when we look at this overall composition, yes, early vote is very, very important for the Democrats. They do need to be ahead in the early vote. It's 50% overall, but our turnout rate isn't that high right now. So therefore, it's not necessarily a worry until maybe a week and a half from now. But we do see overall that this early in-person voting can be a little bit closer than maybe many people actually think. All right, so why is this happening? Well, we don't know. The first thing we need to focus on is that it's not necessarily that the Republicans are going up. It's that these three Democratic counties have gone down a little bit. So if, again, they are able to recapture what they have and they have better turnouts in these next few days, then we should expect the numbers to kind of even out back to where they should be. That being said, however, if we go ahead and look at the state of Virginia, a few weeks back, they started in-person voting as well. And if you remember in those first few days, the Republicans had a little bit of a bounce, and the Republican pundits and everyone were talking about how early vote numbers in Virginia were looking really, really well for them. And then all of a sudden, it started becoming less and less well for them. And now you don't hear them talk about those numbers anymore. So we could see something like that happening in Georgia right now, where there might be a little bit of a Republican boost. And then all of a sudden, it just becomes more and more Democratic. Again, it all depends on how that metro Atlanta area performs. If it's constantly underperforming like now, even though Fulton and Clayton are doing their job, if it keeps underperforming, these numbers will keep staying at this lower level, which is something that the Democrats absolutely do not need. But we might see another Virginia effect going on right here. All right, so with that being the case, let's go ahead and go to the updated Nowcast model that I have for the state of Georgia. Okay, so here is the voting trend Georgia average Nowcast model. So I'll explain this a little bit in a few, but as you can see, the turnout is at 5.6%. So basically what this model does is it takes the previous elections from 2016 to 2022, looks at the Democratic and Republican averages over all of those, figures out two standard deviations from the mean to figure out an upper and lower bounds, and then looks at that to determine the likelihood of the Democrats or Republicans to win the state. Now, with those higher and lower bounds, I just take the average of those, and that is our current projection. Now, according to previous turnout rates in 2020 and 2016, it is estimated that a candidate to get over 50% would need 2.2 million votes, around there. That looks like a very exact number, but it's not an exact number because we don't know how many people will vote. But as of right now, I have the Republicans winning according to my model. This isn't actual real votes. These are just projected votes based on the data we have. that Republicans would win 198,647 to the Democrats 181,074. Now, if you look at where it says geographical accuracy, this just says how well is the data as far as the county level dispersed compared to what we have right now. So remember I mentioned in the earlier part of this video how each of the counties were different from 2020. So basically this is just using a linear regression to see how much those counties are in line with one another. And as of right now, this model is pretty accurate. Extremely accurate is 1. So having a 0.9633, we really want to have a 0.95 with these models to have some sort of faith in them. So they actually look really good right now. So overall, I don't think we're at a panic point in this election. And as a matter of fact, a lot of these counties and a lot of Democratic areas actually do a lot of in-person voting on the weekend, especially the weekends closer and closer to Election Day. So we might not really see any huge Democratic trends for the next week. We might see a bump for the Democrats after this weekend's vote. We might even see a bump for the Democrats today. I don't think so. Like, we might, but I don't think so. I think the weekends will be what really brings the bump. So this weekend will bring a big bump. The next weekend will bring a big bump. And when we have a lot of African Americans voting in early voting, these weekends are where we see the really big bump. So watch the numbers on Mondays to see what happens, or on Sunday evenings if they actually update their numbers on the weekend. I don't know. But these are where I would say that we would see the big Democratic bumps. But again, yes, it's down, but people think, oh, it's a record number. That must have meant that Democrats did quite well. It's actually the opposite. So please don't fall for this myth of if you have a lot of early in-person voting or a lot of early vote, that somehow means a Democratic victory. No, it does not. It matters where that vote comes from first and foremost. All right, so thank you all very much for watching the video. I will see you in the next one. Have a wonderful day wherever it is you are, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.